So you might not believe it, but you are looking at the Shenandoah Mountain champion of the 1992 watermelon seed spitting contest. I can lick anyone here. I went against 5 other contestants. One of them was 8 years younger than me, my little brother, so that was easy. And then the other one was someone from Florida who had never ever eaten a watermelon in their life. And so I was able to triumphantly be proclaimed king of the Shenandoah Mountain watermelon seed spitting contest, even though there's only 5 other contestants. But why do I say that? Because, you know, we have this image of the sower going out to sow the seed. And in a certain sense, you can think of this sower having a whole mouthful of watermelon seeds. And the amazing thing about watermelon seeds, if you fire them right, you can put them anywhere. They can land on the gravel. They can land in a whole bunch of thistles. They can land also in good soil. And watermelon seeds, depending on, it's not the watermelon seed's fault what happens, but it's rather what it lands in that's going to determine whether that seed is going to blossom or not. Now, some of you know, my dad was a plant scientist. He worked for the EPA for many, many years and was in charge of some of their seed and soil specializations. And he knows a lot about soil. And one of the things that he mentioned about soil is he said, this area of the United States actually has some of the strongest, richest soil you could possibly find in our country, right in this particular area, this dark, dark topsoil. And the way that that comes about is over time, allowing organic matter to be blended in and little by little start to create this real fertile soil. Now, one of the other things that's important with soil is you need things to go through it. You need earthworms, these mysterious creatures that are hidden underground, that are kind of, yucky looking, and yet they're the ones that break up the soil underneath. And then also a good rule of thumb for having good soil is the less artificial stuff you have in it, the better. Because the artificial stuff doesn't break down. So think of those things as we go through this image that Jesus is giving us about these different kinds of soil. So we first start with the path. It's definitely something artificial. You could think of it in many ways as, are there things that are artificial that have been placed into our heart? I'm not talking about pacemakers or anything like that, but things that are not real. Things that maybe are promising happiness, are promising joy, are promising the answer to all of your problems, and yet there's a way in which we hold on to whatever that is, we get hooked on that, and that starts to sink into our heart. And it's like those herbicides or pesticides that are not good for the environment, that some of them are, but some of them aren't. That's actually what my dad, his job was to go after the big companies that really had some really kind of poisonous stuff that was not good for the crops and for large mammals and things like that. But that stuff kind of sticks. It doesn't really go away. And so do we have those kind of chemicals, spiritually speaking, that have somehow made their way into our heart, and we're wondering, why is that spiritual fruit not growing? Maybe we're planting that seed on something artificial, and it's not going to be able to grow. So we have to kind of look at that and examine, is there something artificial that we're holding on to, something that promises a lot, and yet it's fake? It's an artificial flower that looks so real, and yet it's made out of plastic, and plastic doesn't decompose. When we build on that, it says, then the evil one comes and steals away what was trying to be sown there. So there's an enemy that when we plant that stuff on the artificial, he knows that he can come in because there's just no roots, there's no nothing, and he can sweep that away. The second area is the rocky soil. And this is the one that it says, this is someone who hears the word and receives it at once with joy. But he has no root and lasts only for a time. I think everyone at some point, for the most part, will have some sort of religious experience. Maybe they go on a retreat. Maybe there's just a powerful moment. Maybe there's an answer to prayer. Maybe there's something like that. And all of a sudden, there's like an excitement. There's a yes. God, you're real. Thank you. But sadly, what happens many times in those moments is we then don't cultivate that soil. Sort of like the root starts, and then we say, okay, I'm done. We need to be able to have something that breaks apart the soil, because those roots won't really be able to go down if it's compact. So we need earthworms, spiritually speaking. Think about daily practices, things that are ordinary. Maybe are boring, maybe are things that you don't really even want to do sometimes. Praying every day, whether you're tired or not. Being able to go to Mass when you'd rather just stay home and watch football or whatever. These sort of very basic, whether you feel it or not, when you start putting these things into your life and in your family life, then it starts creating those roots. So that when the feeling goes, because feelings come and go, there'll be something a little more substantial to keep you grounded. When the sun comes up and starts to scorch, you have the roots that will bring the nutrients up and keep you hydrated, spiritually speaking. So maybe think about, what are those practices that maybe I've seen during this pandemic time that have kind of maybe moved away? Maybe there's some that we've developed, and that's good, but maybe there's others that we've just kind of lost, and we need to recover some of them again. The last one is the thorns, these thistles. And these represent worldly anxiety, the lure of riches, the stuff that might not necessarily be bad in and of itself, but it crowds out the heart to be able to listen to God. One of the ways that soil becomes rich, as my dad mentioned, is things have to die. It's kind of weird to think about it like that, but in order for organic matter to make it fertile, there has to be certain kind of plant matter and animal matter that dies and goes into the soil and over time makes it rich. If those thistles and if those plants that are weeds and things that should not be there, if they just keep staying alive, then sooner or later, like sometimes we see in Our Lady of Guadalupe garden, these thistles that come up and you just see them start to choke the roses that are there. And it takes that persistence of taking them out, letting them die, so then the soil can become richer. So what are the things in your life that maybe you're just finding them taking over your heart? You're not able to breathe spiritually because there's too much noise. There's too much going on, and your heart isn't able to rest in Jesus. So think about these things and allow the Lord to take out, remove what's artificial there. To allow His presence that goes underneath to break apart the soil so the roots can grow, to have those daily practices that you build your relationship with God upon, whether you feel like it or not. And then finally, what are the things that are alive in your heart that need to die, so that there's space for the Lord to speak, to grow? And even through those things dying, like St. Paul talks about the old man dying and the new man rising, we experience a more fertile soil that yields 100, 60, or 30-fold.